Imagine owning a piece of a $70 million apartment community with no tenants to manage, no maintenance calls, and no mortgage to personally guarantee. That sounds like something only institutional investors get access to, but it's not. It's called a Delaware Statutory Trust. And today I'm breaking down exactly how it works, who it's for, and just as importantly, who it isn't for. Quick note before we start, this is an educational content, not personalized investment or tax advice. DST interests are illiquid securities available only to accredited investors, and everything here depends on your individual circumstances. I'm Johnny Lynum, retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, investor, and financial advisor, and I help real estate investors move from active ownership into passive real estate. Let's get started with today's topic. So, what is a DST? Let's start with the basic definition. A Delaware Statutory Trust, DST for short, is a legal structure that allows multiple investors to own fractional interest in large, professionally managed real estate properties. Instead of owning and managing a property directly, you own a beneficial interest in the trust alongside other investors. Here's why this exists in the first place. A lot of real estate investors, they want to own and reach a point where they're no longer really trying to be an active investor, whether it's taking up a lot of time, they're no longer looking to do value add type of properties. They're tired of the tenants, the toilets, and the trash that come with being an active owner. I'm an active owner, owning 4 apartment complexes, and I will tell you that there's all type of challenges. I will tell you, I just wrapped up my quarterly report for the second quarter, 26. And we had 2 tenants that are residents. I like to say using the interchange, but I really prefer residents. 2 residents that end up going to assisted living facility and one that passed away. We one of the things when we took over, we decided to keep the elderly tenants in place that had been there over a decade, that we weren't moving them out to do renovations and to run up the rental rates to bring up to market. And so we were patient with a lot of our residents, and, but it happens. So this quarter we had 3 units to go down. I think we had 1 eviction and 1 person to choose to move out. And so turnover, that's one of the things that comes up in that quarter that I kind of talked about, the CapEx, the capital expenditures and the turnover. But I'm fairly young, early 40s. I got a little bit of runway to go with managing the business, but there's going to come a point in time where I no longer want to deal with the tenants, toilets, and trash. And so once that time comes for an investor, they have to find out what's the right move where you can move on, still to defer capital gain taxes. If you don't know about 1031 exchange, that's a great video that I recently uploaded that you can go check out. But once you're going to move from an active landlord to a passive landlord. And that's where, when you get tired and burnt out from the operational side, that you move. And that those late night maintenance calls, the tenant disputes, and at the same time, you still want your money working for you in real estate, but not sitting in cash. And the Delaware Statutory Trust is really built to solve that problem. There are 3 things that fundamentally change the moment you move from direct ownership into DST. So number 1 is the beneficial interest, not a deed. 1, you own a beneficial interest in the trust, not a title deed to a specific building. Your ownership is actually spread across a portfolio alongside other investors, similar in spirit to owning shares of a company, but not the whole company. And I think, really one of the things that you want to look at is how does this compare when it comes down to the ownership? And the good thing is it's a passive setup where you're not dealing with the day-to-day operations, but in the eyes of the Internal Revenue or the IRS, that they view this as a like-kind exchange. And so you can do a 1031 and own this fractional ownership. Number 2, you may receive potential income distributions similar in concept to rental income, but without being the landlord. So I want to underline the word potential here because distributions are subject to property performance and financing terms. Nothing about a DST guarantees income, and that's true of any real estate investment, direct or passive. So that's something to definitely take into account where it's not guaranteed. You have DSTs that have 0 debt, some that have, leverage, whether it's 50%, 65%, 70% leverage in regards to the debt that they carry on the property, and potential returns that they'll let you know up front. They're not guaranteed, but they have a proposal or business plan on where the different returns should land for you and the timing on whether it's going to be paid out monthly or on a quarterly basis. So Benefit number three, I would say, is management side of it. And so you don't have to handle the tenants, the maintenance, the leasing, or the day-to-day decisions. That's handled by the trust sponsor and professional property management in this case with these assets. This is the trade that you're making. You're giving up control where you got less control in exchange for zero operational burden. And going through that process, it allows you to be ultimately passive. So what kind of properties actually sit inside a DST? Typically, institutional quality real estate that individual investors couldn't easily buy or manage on their own. So apartment communities, industrial and logistics facilities, medical office buildings, net lease retail with tenants like national pharmacy or grocery chains, and self-storage facilities. These are the same asset classes large pension funds and institutions invest in. DSTs give individual investors fractional access to the same top tier real estate. Now, here's why this specifically matters if you're doing a 1031 exchange. Under Revenue Rule in 2004-86, DST interest may qualify as like-kind replacement property when properly structured. That means the capital gains deferral you've already locked in through your exchange can carry forward into a DST. You're not starting the tax clock over, and you're not required to negotiate, and close on another active property within that tight 45-day window. And so, but I want to be very direct about the trade-offs, because a DST is not a free upgrade over direct ownership. It comes with real limitations. And so I think that's one of the things that you want to know. You want to understand what those trade-offs are. These are illiquid investments, so their limited ability to sell your interest before the investment concludes, which is often 5 to 10 years, sometimes longer, but I've seen some as low as 2 years. You don't have control over property level decisions. You're not voting on whether to refinance or to sell. There are fees at multiple stages of the investment, and there's no guarantee of income or return of capital like any real estate investment. Values and distributions can go down as well as up. Because of that, DSTs are typically appropriate only for investors genuinely tolerate illiquidity and long-term commitments, not money you might need access to in the next few years. And so knowing is half the battle. I think that, what is that, G.I. Joe? And in practice, I see this fit is best for investors nearing or already in retirement who want income without a second career as a landlord, and owners of multiple assets or small properties who've decided the headache isn't worth the marginal return anymore, and investors who've done the math and decided their time is worth more than the small amount of money that they control that they're giving up. And so I think that's the big thing, that we all get to the point where we want to be less hands off and just do whatever we want to do. Some there sooner rather than later. Some find it out later in life. I've talked with investors that are in their 80s and 90s, for instance, that are still active in the day-to-day grind, making decisions. And but some of them, they love it. And others, they're like, hey, my family can't take over this real estate portfolio. I have to start planning on how I'm going to move forward and properly set up my estate. And there's different things like the 721 UPREIT, the process where the DST goes into a REIT and you gain operational shares of the REIT, which is a security. And now you can pass that along through your trust to your heirs, where you get to receive that step up in basis and completely wipe out those tax gains. That's another video to go through, but there's a lot of strategy around DSTs and how you can leverage them in estate planning that a lot of people just don't know. And so I think that's the thing when you look at retirees, those tired landlords, and the time commitment where you're willing to take on a little bit less return, because guess what? You're getting all your time back. And so if you want to see real examples, actual DST offerings across different asset classes, hold periods, and minimum investments, not just the theory, I put together a full breakdown, and the link is in the description below. And if you want to talk through whether, a DST fits your specific 1031 timeline, book a complimentary call at the end of the video at johnlynum.com/call. And I usually get back to you guys in one business day and really go through and help you plan out and understand the trade-offs that you're looking at, and whether this is a good investment for you in the 1031 exchange that you're looking for, or if there are other things that you're really considering in regards to like your financial planning and you want a second opinion on just, hey, is this the right move for me? I would love to have that conversation with you. Let's go. Let's make some equity happen together, and I'll see you on the next video.